Welcome to Lesson 12. This is the third of 3 parts in the lesson about investing. Now you've heard the phrase that there's no such thing as a free lunch. This is certainly true in the world of investing. I would caution you that if you think there are no fees or costs associated with anything you're already doing, you should look more closely. If you have a 401k at work and there aren't any fees that are noticeable to you, and there's no broker, financial advisor, or consultant associated with your 401k, you should know that there are fees at some level. These fees may be reasonable or they may be outrageous. Speaking practically about the real world, there are an increasing number of regulations that ensure that consumers are well aware of any and all fees associated with an investment. Although these regulations may be considered cumbersome by a number of industry professionals and considered annoying due to the flood of paper that comes to your mailbox or email account, these provisions are meant to be in your best interest. So generally speaking, I think this is a good thing. I would encourage you to open up the envelope and read that prospectus at least once in your lifetime. Let's get back to the lesson and talk about the people involved in this industry. I'm going to talk about the different players in the industry, and I will try to explain the differences in an unbiased fashion. For your disclosure, I will identify how I operate so you can so you can judge for yourself if I have any biases. When it comes to managing money in a hands-on fashion in the regulated world, there are 2 main players, the registered representative and the registered investment advisor. I use the term repeatedly, regulated world, in stark contrast to your neighbor, friend, or family member that may pool together some money and then purchase real estate, lend money, or run some sort of non-regulated investment pool or club. I often hear about people like this on a regular basis and strongly discourage anyone from getting involved in such programs due to the lack of regulations, licensing, transparency, and oversight. First, let's talk about the registered representative. These people are typically commission-based salespeople who are paid per transaction. They can offer you anything from stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and also things like limited partnerships and many other financial products like variable annuities, life insurance, fixed annuities, so on and so forth. They're all regulated by an agency called FINRA, the Financial Regulatory Authority. This used to be called the NASD, the National Association of Securities Dealers. Next, let's move on to the Registered Investment Advisor. These people are regulated by the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. These people are typically paid on a fee basis. This means they charge a percentage of the money they manage on your behalf. This could be a flat percentage or a tiered percentage. A flat percentage could be 1.5% of the money that they manage for you. A tiered approach would mean something like 2% on the first $100,000 you have, and then 1.5% on the first dollar above $100,000, all the way to $1 million, and then 1% for everything over $1 million. This is an example only. Some financial professionals, however, can wear multiple hats. For example, some people are registered representatives, but also work under a registered investment advisor to offer both services. If you're working with someone that's regulated, there should be some sort of registration for them and their organization at one of the sites or both of the sites that we have listed here on the slide. Now let's talk about the various compensation model industry professionals use. People often choose, professionals that is, often choose a model and claim their method of being paid is preferable with the least amount of conflicts of interest. Ultimately, anyone can argue there's always a conflict of interest as long as someone is getting paid. However, since no one does it for free, it's important to know how you are charged for the advice that you received. That there's good and there's bad professionals in every model, so I can't honestly say you should avoid or utilize someone solely based upon their compensation model. The first method to know is commission only. This is common with stockbrokers. This means every time there's a transaction, there's a charge or a commission to the person or organization that manages your money. Their conflict of interest is that they might churn your account, meaning excessively trade your account in order to generate commissions. This model may work well for a client who wants to purchase some investments and then not sell them for many, many years. It would be very uncommon to find someone, a professional that is, who will give ongoing and consistent advice but operates purely on a transactional basis. After all, they would probably need to continually hunt down transactions or review their existing customer base for transactions in order to get paid for their time and their advice. The next model we'll talk about is fee-based. This means the professional charges a percentage of the assets they manage for you. This is an ongoing charge that compensates the professional on an ongoing basis. The idea here is that the person may transact your account 10 times a year or 1,000 times a year. Their incentive is to make your account grow over time, and they should not want your account to decline in value as it becomes a pay cut to them. So again, it doesn't matter if they transact 10 times a year or 1,000 times a year, their incentive is growing your account. They often use the phrase that they sit on the same side of the table as you. However, the potential downside with this is that they may never perform a review or really contact you after they've acquired your assets. This is what's called reverse churning, and you'd be better suited to just deal with the previous commission-only guy that just buys your investments and then you can just hold on to them to as long as you want. Although reverse churning is a real term and may be real in the industry, it's my experience that these type of people must earn these people must earn your business each and every day. The argument these people may make is that their commission-only competitors earn multiple years or multiple months of revenue in only one transaction, whereas they have to earn your business again each and every day throughout the year. A flat fee model means that you're charged a flat fee that is either their standard fee based upon the amount of work your situation requires or an hourly rate. This may be appealing and advantageous for many consumers, especially those without large amounts of investable capital or ones with very large amounts of capital. The conflict with these people is that they could excessively bill the client or charge a fee for only very generic advice. Lastly, we have what's called the fee and commissions model. Many people who refer to themselves as fee-based are actually this. This means the professional offers multiple ways of being compensated based upon what makes sense for the client, for what the client wants, or they can adjust one for the other. Some have minimum fees for their advice, or they state that they state what their charges are and then offset. Excuse me. Or they state what their charges are and then offset their charges by commissions generated. Some don't do this either. On a complete side note, my practice operates on the fee and commission basis, although we are heavily biased towards charging a percentage of the assets we manage. However, we do earn commissions on implementing recommendations that we make to a client, such as life insurance or investment programs that we cannot place in a fee-based account. Speaking personally, we offer this model so that we can have the most flexibility in investing a client's money. Again, speaking personally, we make a point to tell our clients exactly how we're getting paid so they understand. That's why we lean towards the fee-based asset management charge. We chose this model so that if a client wishes to pay us a flat fee, they can do that. If they wish for us to manage their money for a percentage, we can do that as well. If they wish for just to purchase an investment and receive advice based upon that, we can accommodate that too. However, the potential downsides are multiple in nature because with this model, it's a combination of all the other compensation models we listed. It's important to note that you may walk into an office that charges one way, but the person you're dealing with is paid another. For instance, you may be charged a percentage of your account on a regular basis, but the person you're meeting with on that same regular basis who services your account is paid by a salary or maybe a salary with bonuses. It's important to note that the title you see on a business card or an email signature is not always regulated. Almost anyone can call themselves a financial planner or financial advisor. I've even heard of people that only sell motorcycle insurance that refer to themselves as financial planners. On this slide, you'll find a brief list of commonly used titles. In a moment, we will try to figure out who you're working with and what to expect so you don't have to guess based upon a title. There are many designations in the financial industry. It's important to know that none of these titles are supervised by the federal government. Some, like attorneys and CPAs, are regulated state by a state board. The most common designation in the personal finance space is probably the CFP, Certified Financial Planner designation. This professional must take a series of courses to satisfy an education requirement, then pass a multi-hour standard exam that is proctored by a representative of the CFP board that's offered 3 times a year. They also have ethical and experience requirements as well. 2 other common designations are the CHFC and the CLU. Chartered Financial Consultant and Chartered Life Underwriter. These designations are offered by the American College. The CLU claims to be one of the oldest and most respected designations in the financial world, but is typically more suited for insurance professionals. The CHFC was created by the American College about the same time as the CFP as a competing designation. Another common designation is the CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst. This is a rigorous 3-level exam supervised by an organization called the CFA Institute. Many people that work with the retail public achieve this designation, but some find it more suited for institutional money management, such as large institutions, endowments, things like that, and operating businesses. There are many, many more designations that exist. A few years ago, the AIF designation was on the rise, and now seems to be more centered around people that specialize in institutional programs, 401ks, and other retirement plans, etc. There are designations like the CDFC for people that wish to specialize in divorce, and the Chartered Mutual Fund Consultant for people that only want to sell mutual funds. Heck, there's even a designation that mixes the Christian faith and personal finance and focuses on the two together. It's important to note here that designations can potentially spring up out of nowhere. For many years, many firms were even making up their own designations. However, in recent years, there's been much frowning upon this by the SEC and FINRA. Furthermore, there has been a large crackdown against designations that claim to specialize in working with senior citizens in an effort to protect Americans older than age 60. Lastly, I'll cover the CPA designation. This is a certified public accountant. CPAs can have multiple roles or functions. Some work in tax preparation and tax advisement. Some perform auditing of financial statements. Some do bookkeeping and accounting. Some do multiple roles I just listed here. It's my experience that most CPAs do not like giving advice in things like retirement planning, insurance, investment advice, etc. because they are not properly licensed for it. Some actually do give advice in those spaces. Some CPAs even offer financial services like mutual funds, life insurance, in addition to tax advice. However, I would refrain from assuming that CPAs can answer all things financial, as much as I would refrain from assuming a CFP can answer all things tax-wise. These types of professionals can typically know a little bit about each other's fields, but shouldn't necessarily give advice in other fields unless they're truly qualified to do so. So the question you may have is, with all the information I've given, how do I select somebody to give me advice? There's so much to decide from. Ultimately, take a chance, read over this information, but here's some general guidelines. First, you should know there's good and bad everywhere. No one compensation model is necessarily the best. Every firm has its good guys and its bad guys. There's crooks as well as angels everywhere. There are people out there who don't know what they're doing, but come across as experts, and of course, vice versa. There's people that know their information really well, but may present kind of nervous, and you may not be uncomfortable with that. Get to know someone by asking a lot of questions up front. I recommend only working with someone who works under some sort of regulatory agency like FINRA or the SEC. I would recommend against just taking advice from a neighbor, friend, family member, etc. that does not have any licenses or anything of the sort. It's common to ask your friends and family who they use. Unfortunately, this isn't always totally fail-safe, but at least it gives you a good idea. You should ask people that are referring what they like about the professionals they work with. What kind of advice do they give? How are their needs serviced? And what the professional offers them as far as advice. Also, go back to the previous slide and review the websites I listed where you can do a brief background check on the professional you're going to be working with. Here's a short list of questions you may want to ask. Additionally, sites like the CFP board's cfp.net has lists of interview questions that you can use as examples. I would take this list seriously. After all, it is your money. You should be interviewing somebody as you would interview an employee. Ask questions like how long they've been in business. feel free to ask them a brief history of their career. There's not necessarily anything wrong with someone that's new, but you may prefer somebody with more experience, or vice versa. It's important to ask somebody how they get paid. As I stated, I don't believe there's anything necessarily wrong with one model over another, but you should be aware, especially if the professional keeps suggesting certain programs over others, because there may be a conflict of interest. Ask them what kind of services they offer. Do they just give investment advice? Do they only sell insurance? Do they do both? Do they offer financial planning as a service with a comprehensive financial plan? What should you expect as a client? Also ask, is there a proprietary product or series of proprietary products that they offer? Now, they may have the best product in town, but you may also be uncomfortable with using their home team. But like I said, it's very possible that their proprietary product is a great one, and it's very suitable, but it just so happens that it's their proprietary product. It also may be that they have restrictions, and that's the only one they can offer. It may not be the best for you. It's a good question to ask them if they have a specialty or an expertise. Do they only work with a certain type of client? Is that client you? Is there an account minimum? How many clients do they have? You can ask them if they have had any type of negative accusations such as forgery, client complaints, etc. This information is available to the public, and even the most earnest of people can have a client misunderstanding. So just talk to your professional about that. I personally believe in discussing their business or client goals. Some people in the industry only want 50, 100, or 200 clients. Some do not have a limitation because they may have an extensive staff, or they just may know how to operate with a very large client base. I, for one, would like to know if I'm one of 50 or 2,000 clients, just so I can set expectations as to how much time I get with that professional and so on. Again, having a lot of clients may not be a bad thing, because somebody that may have 50 clients can be terrible too. If they're managing your money, I think it's important to ask them how much money they currently manage. Maybe you don't mind having, let's say, $50,000 of a financial advisor's $100 million client base. Maybe you don't like that. It's just personal preference.